One of my favourite kinds of books are what I'm calling surveys. So books that take a look at a particular era or kind of literature and go through a number of key figures, give you a basic idea of what they're about, just give you a sort of roadmap to explore that area more and to discover things you didn't know about before. So in this video I'm just going to list some of these kinds of books that have been particularly helpful for me and might open up things for you. One example that comes to mind is the Victorian Walter Pater's book on the Renaissance. It's been a long time since I read it, and to be honest, because the Renaissance isn't my particular interest, I can't remember a huge amount about it, but I just remember I enjoyed it, and it was very influential, particularly on Oscar Wilde and others like him. But probably the book that first comes to mind seriously for me is by Arthur Symons, the Symbolist movement in literature. And this was about a number of French figures in the 19th century, from Balzac through the poet Baudelaire, others including Paul Verlaine and Arthur Rimbaud. And it's just an excellent overview of these figures that had big influence ultimately, and will definitely open up that side of things for you. Simon's book was very important for T.S. Eliot and for William Butler Yeats, so it's very much a part of the history of modernist literature, and it's very much a must-read if you're at all interested in those figures. Next, I'd say Raymond Williams' Culture and Society. This is a book that Williams wrote, I think, in the 50s, and it's an exploration of how this whole idea of culture kind of developed in Britain. Williams would say from the Victorian times, or sort of rather at the beginning of the 19th century onwards, in reaction to the Industrial Revolution, in reaction to the increased capitalisation of British life, an attempt to find a more organic ideal of what society could be. And to that extent, he goes from figures like William Cobbett, the radical in the early 19th century, through figures like John Ruskin, William Morris, who wanted art and culture to play a significant part in re-enriching the lives of the common man in Britain, through to others like D.H. Lawrence and his approach to these questions, up to George Orwell. It's just a great book for learning more about many significant figures in this line of British history, and it's still worth a read. Next, Terry Eagleton's Marxism and Literary Criticism. So this is a very short read. It's not exactly the same as the others I'm discussing. It doesn't go through different figures one by one, but it does cover a lot of bases in terms of Marx's literary criticism up to the time he wrote it, gives some productive ideas of his own, and leaves you with further avenues to pursue, and so that's very much worthwhile. Next, Czeslaw Milowsz, if that's how you pronounce it. That's any Polish listeners will want to correct me, but his history of Polish literature is really great. I've only read some of it. I kind of dip in and out, but it's just a very good way into the history of Poland. He gives a sort of rough overview for each era before talking about key literary figures in depth. And I think what I found particularly fascinating is to read about how broad intellectual movements, whether it's the Reformation or the Enlightenment or Romanticism, how those movements played out in a country the other side of Europe from me, um, in ways that I didn't know about before. So things that are both familiar but made fresh and new. So I'd highly recommend picking that up to expand your horizons in many senses. Next, I say Fredric Jameson's Years of Theory. This is a posthumously published series of lectures. So Jameson died last year, and these lectures are about French theory, which in some ways he was involved with. He was in Paris in those post-war years, and he's got a number of interesting anecdotes woven in there. He's sort of notorious for having a difficult writing style, which I really appreciate his writing style in general. But in this case, it's much more accessible. And he goes from figures like Jean-Paul Sartre, who I knew a bit about, I'd read a bit about, but I didn't really appreciate how important he was to this line of thinking, to this lineage of thinkers, until I read these lectures. So he goes from him to figures like Althusser, who I've discussed a bit before, Foucault, Derrida, all the big names are here, and you'll learn many new things, you'll make many connections you hadn't before, and you'll probably want to go and read some more. And then finally, one on music. It's Alex Ross's The Rest is Noise, and this is about the shape classical music took in the 20th century. And this just opened up all kinds of things for me. It got me listening to Mahler. It got me listening to all of his symphonies ultimately. Stravinsky, Schoenberg, Morton Feldman, who's become a massive favourite, the New York sort of more minimalist composer. Oliver Messiaen, his Quartet for the End of Time, which has become very special to me. So if you want to expand your musical horizons and find new things you didn't know before, Alex Ross's The Rest is Noise is definitely worth a look.